Chris from Arkansas wrote into Darkness Radio, my Minnesota homies, with a bizarre black-eyed kid encounter he had in 2015. In 2015, around the end of April, beginning of May, Chris was in Oregon for work. He worked for a company that handled the customer service member privilege point of sale system for Planet Fitness, and he was there checking on a few locations. And since Planet Fitness is a 24/7 business, he had to cater to all the shifts and would show up at the club locations several times, both night and day. One night, at approximately 11:30 at night, he was headed to the Planet Fitness in Beaverton, Oregon. His rental car had Bluetooth capabilities, and he was playing an episode of Coast to Coast AM on the car's speakers. The episode was a George Noory episode, and George had a guest on to talk about the gin. And Chris remembers because George brought up the idea of black-eyed kids to the guest, who said she thought that was gin-related. Looking back, that was a serious coincidence, because what happened when he arrived at the club chilled him to the core. When Chris arrives at the club, he decides to have a smoke in the parking lot with the driver's side window of his car open so he can continue to listen to Coast AM without actually smoking in the car so he doesn't get a fine. And the Planet Fitness there is in an L-shaped strip mall. And he doesn't remember all the stores in the strip mall, but Planet Fitness is furthest to the right, and all the way to the left is a pharmacy of some kind. And Chris's passenger side is parallel with Planet Fitness, which is about 30 feet away from a streetlight. And the pharmacy is about 75 yards away and is obviously closed. And Chris is just leaning on his car, smoking and playing on his phone. He looks up, glances at the pharmacy, and can see from the light of the marquee sign 2 people standing in front of it. And he thinks, well, that's weird. Why would these people be standing outside an obviously closed pharmacy at almost midnight? But the thought is fleeting, and Chris is once again head down, Facebooking on his phone. After a few seconds, he looks up again, and he notices that the 2 people that he can now tell are kids or teenagers are about 20% closer, and it strikes him as odd. He didn't see them walk to that location, and they are just looking at him. And Chris says he knows that they were only looking in his general direction, but he adds, only half sarcastically, that it feels like they are looking into his soul. From this distance, he can tell that both are wearing hooded sweatshirts. They're dark in color, and both kids have their hoods up, and they are just outside that street light glow. Light, but not enough to see any real details. And maybe this should have raised some flags, but once again, Chris's head goes back to his phone. And around this time, George is talking to his guest about evil spirit attachment in items from the Middle East that servicemen had brought back home with them. And Chris glances back up, and the kids are now 25 or 30 feet away from him. They are once again outside of the direct streetlight glow, but this time he can see them much clearer. This time, their heads are aimed down. He can't see their faces, but he can make out their clothes. One has an olive drab green hooded sweatshirts with no markings and no insignias. The hoodie is up over the top of what appears to be a gray baseball hat with, again, no markings or insignias. Baggy, nondescript jeans and black low-top shoes, also with no markings of any kind. The other is dressed very similarly, the only difference being a navy blue zip-up hoodie with the hoodie up over the top of what looks to be a black baseball cap, khaki pants, and white shoes. Same as the first, nothing to distinguish any brands on any of the articles of clothing. And the kids are standing still. Chris didn't see them move to their current location, and it's like they're frozen, not moving at all. And he doesn't know how or why, but he just goes back to his phone, not bothered at all. But Chris gets a weird feeling this time almost instantly and looks up. And there they are, 5 feet in front of him and not moving, just closer. And again, just outside of the light from the streetlight. But this time, he has the best view yet of what they look like. Their clothes were weird. They were too big. Not too big like kids in the 90s wore, but too big like hand-me-downs. And they're faded. Chris can see the colors of everything that they're wearing, but it's like they're dingy. And he can tell by their physical build that they're both males, and judging by their size, he's guessing they were about 15 years old. Still not bothered, Chris tosses the cigarette butt underneath the car and looks at the kids and says, "Hey guys, what's going on? Anything I can do for you?"
Please, kind sir, may we borrow a cigarette? It's very lonely at night. We only need one cigarette. Thank you. Please.
After they finish speaking, they slowly raise their heads to show Chris their faces. And Chris remembers thinking, it's kind of late for teenagers to be out on a Thursday. And almost as if they plucked that thought straight out of his head, he hears,
"It's quite all right. We have permission."
As soon as permission rolls off the lips of the second kid, their faces are now even with Chris's, showing him solid jet black eyes. Chris freezes. His mind starts going about 1,000,000 miles a minute because, damn it, he knows what black-eyed kids are. Well, not what they are, but he knows of them. He can't move or speak, but he sees that their faces are pretty much the definition of the word blank, but only almost, because the edges around their slit straight mouths start to curl up ever so slightly. And the inside of Chris's stomach begins to get colder, and with all his might, he tries to turn his face, but he can't. The second kid takes a step forward, and the movement catches Chris's eye, and he looks down. And the moment that eye contact is broken, everything Chris knows about black-eyed kids encounters comes rushing into his head. Chris turns around and runs into the club, sprinting in loafers, all of his 6'1", 250 pounds, screaming the entire way. The young kids at the counter just stare at him as he comes barreling through the door. And he tries his best to explain to the blank faces at the staff behind the counter. But in Chris's estimation, they aren't cool enough to have heard about black-eyed kids. He turns around and looks back out the plate glass window of the club and sees the 2 teenagers standing side by side, looking in the club window. And when Chris sees them, chills run down his spine.